So what we've done is we've assembled a panel that travels a very nice arc from SBIR financing through, forgive me, Carl, the big daddy, through a major venture capital firm. And I think we all should recognize too, so Carl Handelsman's with CMEA, which is one of the premier firms in the Bay Area, in the world of venture capital. Just recently had a beautiful exit on a company he took out as a science project here from UCSF. So he goes early and goes long. How's that? And yes. And the other thing I think we should recognize is that we've been listening to a full day of VC bashing. So I don't know if you've been, you weren't here in the morning probably, Carl, but there was a lot of comments like, you know, the investors want a board seat. Yeah, wow, shocking, my goodness, those rapacious bastards, they want to take over the company. And so Carl is stepping into the jaws of the lion here this afternoon, so thank you so much for that brave choice. So, not really introduce, actually I should have the panelists kind of introduce themselves, and we will tell you a little bit about what we're doing very briefly on innovations in funding therapeutics companies. So I'll give each of us, including myself, license for that. Then I'd like to turn our attention to really suggestions for how the heck you can get money out of us and others we know. There's some groups not represented at the table, like corporate venture, foundations. There's other people who have checkbooks, but we know a little bit about how to wrestle those checks free. So we'll talk about that. And then we'd like, really, it'd be most fun for us if this was interactive, so if you interrupted us and asked us questions and challenged our pontifications, all that would be really welcome by us. So moving from, I'll make the introductions from least amount of capital to most amount of capital then. So Jesus Soriano works for the NSF. He's a program officer for SBIR applications. And one of the things that we are absolutely dedicated to at QB3 is encouraging our researchers, our startups, to get SBIR financing. So I'm very happy to have him here today. Alan May, you just met downstairs. He's still the same. And Alan is one of the best and most experienced angel investors in the life science space in the world, and we're honored to have him. And then Carl Handelsman, as I say, is a managing director at CMEA, which is a very prominent venture capital firm operating in the life science and clean tech space. Other industries that I don't know anything about probably too, right? No? Okay, that's good. So let me start with Jesus. We'll do that in the arc, and I'll go second. So Jesus, can you tell us a little bit about SBIR programs that the NSF is running, things that they can get from the NSF?
Yes. Good evening, I guess, and thank you for having me. We are not Big Daddy, but we are Big Uncle Sam. The National Science Foundation is an actual foundation, but it's still, although independent, is a government agency. But we were the group who created the SBIR Small Business Innovation Research Program 30 years ago, when a very smart young program director who was giving funding to just universities. As you know, the NSF injects $7.7 billion in fundamental research every year in the economy. Of those $7 billion, only $150 million go into business, and that's what we do in our division. So this person had the idea of why not giving money to small businesses, and it was so successful that obscure companies like Qualcomm, Symantec, Google, LASIK, and others have been created thanks to us, thanks to your money as a taxpayer. Mm-hmm. So how
about Solyndra?
Solyndra? I was not working there.
Alan, we were Series A investors. I don't want to brag, but
maybe they were. Maybe we funded them. I don't know, but they competed in any case. So what do? You have to think of NSF as the place where you go when nobody wants to listen to you, because basically we want to fund high risk, high impact technologies. We don't care if you have one company. I mean, as I said before, if you are just one person company, we just really want to give you if you pass the competitive process, basically $150,000 over 6 months. So you can do, in phase 1, feasibility study that will give you proof of concept. We're going to look at really disruptive technologies. We don't want to do fundamental research. It's applied research. We're going to measure you by the intellectual merit, basically how original, if you want, is your technology, and second, by the societal impact or commercial potential. So if you come with a good idea that has great, that may fill a wonderful market need, that's what we want. What we do not want to fund is a technology that it goes around looking for a problem to solve, okay? So, and as I said, the more risky, the better. We are not scared. I have a wonderful job because I can make so many mistakes that just because they ask me to take risk, okay? And then I'll be answering any of your questions.
Great. Ellen, you want to jump in next? Actually, I'll go last.
Yeah, so thanks for having me up here. So here's a little piece of good news for you. It turns out that statistically, biotech startups can now actually exit sooner than med tech startups, so particularly implant startups. How in the world can that be, right? Drug development versus medical device development. For a very fundamental reason, the buyers will buy earlier with less proof than the device buyers will buy. So that's changing, as I mentioned downstairs, and people are beginning to realize they all have the same pipeline problem, but it really plays to your benefit. Sophie, who was talking this morning, she got bought at preclinical at a pretty nice return. We very commonly see deals bought at phase 1B, 2A. I wouldn't say commonly, but well enough that that's a target zone for angel investors if you have the right story. So I wouldn't be afraid of therapeutics at all, but you do, of course, have to concentrate on the story and how you package it.
And Alan, I know that LSA just closed a therapeutics investment, right? So this is not outside of your wheelhouse.
No, so we just, so if I'll use that as just a quick example. So this is Gemis. They have a repurposed drug that in combination with Tamiflu does not only increase Tamiflu to 100% effectivity, it opens the window of onset from 48 hours to 100 hours. So everyone realized the biggest issue with Tamiflu was by the time you realize you have the flu and get into a doctor, you're past the 48 hours. So what good did that do? And it's still, what, $1.5 billion drug. So this has an incredible synergistic impact to it. Its safety profile is well known. And incidentally, Tamiflu comes off patent in 3 years. So it's a $3 million shot. We syndicated it out. We got 7 or 8 angel groups involved. We got $2 million committed, and those same groups are committed to putting in the other $1 million if it's needed. And we're willing to go for that as an investment. So that's a pretty bold effort for angels.
Yeah, and I think it's important that everybody up here, we do represent a whole range, but you should really think of it as a continuum. And one of the things that we've done at CMEA is always work closely with angels, universities, and good news on the SBIR program, which I've been working more with the NCI. That money used to be excluded from any company that a venture capitalist would invest in. And now we have the opportunity to, and this hasn't worked out, but some of that money can go now to venture-backed companies. So then the reason is that groups like the NCI, they were mandated that this money had to go out, and they didn't really pay much attention to it. Now they want it to be much more like DARPA and do innovative things. So the good news is, for those of you that have an idea that is innovative, there's a whole continuum of ways to be financing, and there's a more cooperation. I hope Doug mentions you should mention your fund as well. And the thing that we took out of UCSF, which was done by a very good professor here, Kayvon Shokat, was actually farther along. It really wasn't a science project. It was farther along than things 10 years ago would have been after 3 years of having a company around. So Alan's absolutely correct that things are being picked up earlier, but part of the reason is that the technology is there and the insight's there to move a lot farther, faster, with less money.
They're gestating longer.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk now or later about your project-based financing?
Sure.
I'm going to grill you on at some point. So
Yeah. What's happened is, let's say you're a platform company and you got funded 5 years ago, you had a pipeline, and now all of your future value is on your lead product, and so you're investing all your money on your lead product. And the thing that's the fourth thing, the farthest back, it's not there because it's the worst one. In fact, you might have learned so much from the first three, it might be the best one. So I don't call these distressed assets, I call them stranded assets. And what we did is we put together in a company 3 chief medical officers, some of you from the Bay Area, so you've heard of them, Jim Larick, Andy Perlman, Andy Perlman, and Ed Schnipper. And guys who, these are the chief medical officers that did it, helped Chiron become acquired, helped build basic antibody technology, ran the clinical trials on human growth hormone at Genentech, helped Alza become acquired and build their large pipeline. Ed Schnipper actually has an incredible background in terms of designing very efficient clinical trials. So they look at these stranded assets, and we've reviewed over 350. We've in-licensed 1. We've got term sheets out on 3 others. What we're doing is we're looking for the ones that we can move ahead very efficiently.
Question, so for the general panel, if you're from academia or generally anyone new to the process, you guys have sat through thousands and thousands of pitches. What makes a good pitch, and conversely, what are the common mistakes that people make?
That is going to be a key question. Can we just get through a couple? I want to get to that first. Can we put that on the top of the pending list, if that's okay? Because I want to talk a little bit more about some structural issues about the financing world in general and the role of corporates and pharma in the process.
And what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
So I wanted to mention both of those. So this will seem self-serving to interrupt that good question with a bad self-serving remark here, but anyway. So QB3 has an incubator network that Reg mentioned. It has a variety of activities, and one of the things we do is a seed stage venture fund, which I put in my PPM would not be very focused on therapeutics, and yet 5 of our 8 investments, really maybe 6 of our 8 investments are therapeutics, and what the hell did I know, right?
Or means you're not focused.
Right, exactly. And we've become extremely interested in platforms, so I think it would be worthwhile talking about the difference in investment philosophy between platforms and products. I think for us as early investors, platforms make a lot of sense. So actually, let's make that one of our next sort of questions. But we have an $11.3 million fund, and we see ourselves in this continuum, actually shoulder to shoulder with the SBIR, simultaneous, often simultaneous with angels, and occasionally simultaneous with the venture community, trying to be the catalyst that brings the gels, the financing together. The other thing I wanted to talk about, which is consistent with the morning session around lean startups and about getting customer input. So this is something I thought a lot about, so this will be the other panel discussion item for us. So we represent technologists. So you said you don't want technologists searching for markets, but unfortunately that's all I've got to work with in the university. The expertise about market demand, about traditions, about other solutions to that problem that industry has taken are never known to faculty members. The communication between industry and the academic world is poor at best. So we frequently are stuck with trying to have a chemistry or a peptide platform project. And you say, okay, well, what should our first program be? What should our target be for that project? Making a bad decision there will be the death knell of the company. You'll spend $10 million. You'll be in your first serious partnering discussions or whatever amount of money, and it will fall on deaf ears. So we're just launching a program I think that would be relevant to talk about today, which is we're calling it collaborative startups. I want to call it project-based companies, but that had already been taken by others. So we're calling it collaborative startups. And what our goal is that there are entrepreneurs emerging from the university, generally graduate students, postdocs with faculty at their back. We at QB3 have created mechanisms for creating new companies very efficiently. We have an incubator network. We can start companies free of charge with partnerships with law firms. And we've established quite a reputation for operational excellence. Then we have the fund. So now we have 2 legs of a stool. The third leg of the stool we're bringing to the table is a corporate partner
who will make a small investment, $250,000, $500,000 into the NewCo. But much as important, maybe even more important than the money, is they'll choose the program. They'll say, okay, here's the target we want you to focus on. And we're doing 3 of these at various stages. We haven't closed one yet, but we're at 3 of these in various stages of development right now. And I think that this could be a very important way for the future. And it's not with corporate venture, but it's with the arms of pharma that traditionally has dealt with academic alliances, who have better connections through to the scientific community within the corporation, because they've been their customers to sell academic alliances to. And so I think this could be a trend forward. So let's now jump to the audience interest. Let's jump to how the hell do you get money out of us? So why don't we start with the NSF? So how do you pitch, if you will, to the NSF to get their money?
So you start with a phase 1 proposal. We have 2 solicitations a year. The last one just closed on Tuesday, and the next one will be in December. Just Google NSF SBIR, and you have more information that you need, and you have also the name of the program directors. Either I or a colleague called Ruth Schumann we're obliged basically almost by law to get back to you and give you as much advice as you need. So you write, it's basically like a grant, like you would write to NIH or NSF, and your pitch is very simple. What is intellectual merit? NSF for decades already developed basically a gold standard for peer review. There is based on 2 things. One is intellectual merit, so how good is your technology? And if you had that technology, oftentimes comes from universities that have been peer reviewed by NSF itself or NIH or other agencies. So how good is your technology? How, I would put it in lay terms, how original it is, right? And then most importantly was what NSF calls societal impact, or we call it commercial impact. What are you trying to address in the market? When I said we don't want a technology looking for a solution, is something that, how could I say, we want something really original, something that's going to make a difference in society and in the market, something that nobody would dare funding. So you just need to make a good case. We'll give you those $150,000 for 6 months. You need to show a good project and that is feasible. And the idea can be crazy, but if you show vision that you can actually execute, that's it. You will be maybe among the 10% lucky ones that get funded. After that, if you do what you said you were about to do, you qualify for phase 2, where things start getting interesting. You can get, there we go to, we've passed the feasibility and proof of concept, we go to prototype. And there, your commercial plan is very important. For phase 1, you just need a commercial justification. Just make the case, convince us that you are going to make money. Phase 2 is about how are you going to do the prototype. We start giving you $500,000, and what's your commercialization plan? That's critical. We are not interested about science at the time. We're interested about how you're going to make money, how you're going to become wealthy, pay taxes, and create jobs. Once you get in phase 2, we have a whole array of supplements. For instance, we will match 50 cents on the dollar for up to another $500,000 if you're able to sell, partner, license, or bring investment due or thanks to the original investment that we gave you. There, we'll give you that's up to $500,000. We can give you just $100,000 if you bring a strong letter from a potential commercial partner who says, we understand this technology, we love it, but if they were able to make such and such, obtain such and such data set that they don't have, we will enter into a deal with them. Such a letter will give you $100,000, and it doesn't go through panel review. It's the program director who makes the decision. Then we have a whole range of what I call personally socially responsible supplements, where if you partner, because as you may know, NSF is all about research and education in science and engineering, right? So if you partner with a community college, we'll give you money for that. If you partner with a historically black college or institution, we'll give you money for that. If you want to bring undergraduate students, we'll give you money for that. If you bring a teacher, train a teacher so they can go back to their schools and do better STEM education, we'll give you money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So once you get, your objective is to get into the door, being in the 10%. We're going to look for companies that can leverage our money. We are not a client compared to maybe the Army or DoD. Our client is the US taxpayer. We want to leverage our funds so you make them live a better life, okay? So, and we will see, the bottom line is we want to see your potential to leverage our funds to then raise money from the private sector.
The last time I checked, NSF is not funding Therapeutics Funding.
That's not true, because that's why I got a job there.
I have an email contact with someone there, and on the list of the...
So you called the wrong person.
It's not in the list of the topic.
What's your name?
Gina?
You didn't call me.
It was not you. It
No,
was someone.
absolutely.
It was a woman.
But we do discovery. It depends how you pitch the question.
What is the topic number?
I don't remember, but it's called drug discovery.
Okay, I'll email you. And
Please.
Yeah, one of our garage companies received an NSF grant for
Yeah.
drug discovery.
But drug discovery, what we want to do is platforms. What we are going to do is like NIH. NIH are very disease-oriented. The panel review system, which is very solid, is kind of controlled by, and I'm not criticizing them, but it's controlled by those study sections where the panelists are there for years, so they really have too much influence. Here, our panels have, we decide who the panelists are, and they only give us advice. The program director makes the decision, and I can tell you the program director comes from the private sector. I was a licensing and business development executive for 10 years after leaving academia and after killing a few patients as a medical doctor. So you're talking with folks who have been fighting, the same wars that you've done, trying to raise money, trying to make deals. So just to answer your question, yes, we are very interested in new platforms that will accelerate drug discovery or drug delivery. But we are not interested, because it's not our mandate, to fund like clinical development. Plus, our money won't even put you close to an IND.
Okay, so let's get now to the question, how do you package a therapeutics play so that it can attract private capital? There we go. I got that. I didn't forget. So, Alan, and how many therapeutics pitches do you hear a year?
It's a good question. I think around 200, maybe 200, 220, something like that. So, first, let me ask a question. Are any of you doing medical device implants, or is this all bio? Implant?
Mine's kind of could be classified medical device or biologic. It depends on which competitors I'm looking at and how we look at classified.
It's a beautiful answer. It's a great answer. So, so let me let me give you just a bit of a counterpoint answer to what Jesus just said, and see if this makes sense to you. Our whole world is about financial risk. So it used to be angels. The angels world is about financial risk. Not science risk or technology risk. It used to be a couple, 3 or 4 years ago, that we were all hung up in science and technology risk, and what we realized was that the things that most punish us are not the losers that we have. The things that most punish us are the winners that we have that go on to raise so much capital we get diluted to death. So there's turned out to be a huge difference between, is this a good biotech investment, and is this a good biotech investment for angels? Those are two very radically different questions. So what do we want to hear? Go back to what I said about Gemis. What do you remember about that? I'm going to guess probably what you remember about that is Tamiflu comes off patent in 3 years. Everybody gets that one. So why is that important? Because we're betting that for this amount of money, we can achieve a set of proofs so significant that the likelihood of being bought or being financed at a much higher round valuation is so high that we're willing to take the financial risk of losing all of our money. So the pitch you need to give us is, why is it so likely that on this specific amount of money that we're giving you, that you're asking for, that one of those two things is going to occur. You have to make us believe that, or we're not going to invest. What we have learned the hard way is, and you understand dilution and more rounds of raising capital, and they all come out of equity, and so you do more poorly and early stage investors do more poorly the more equity is sold. So we've understood the hard way that if we don't get a step up in valuation at the next raise, we will never make money on this investment. It doesn't matter how successful the exit is, we'll get crushed. So what you need to do is answer those questions very compellingly, focus on that amount of money in your period of time.
So I'd like to build off of Alan's point there about this dilution, because you know who else gets crushed in addition to the angels? The entrepreneurs. This has been one of our biggest problems. So I will give you how to raise money for me. It's very, very simple. As I'm sitting there listening to what you're telling me, I think, what am I doing on this side of the table? This guy and this woman working together, they're gonna have a lot of fun and they're gonna get rich based on their stock options. That's it. Doesn't matter how smooth you are, doesn't matter whether nothing else matters. That's the only thing. So one of the things that we've lived through is a whole maturation of the biotech process. So a lot of us remember 10 years ago, or I guess a dozen years ago, the go big or go home. There were 3 companies that I looked at that I had the opportunity to invest very early. Breakthrough platform technology raised, the 3 I'm thinking about raised 100 million each. I knew they wouldn't even work. They were so bold, one of them defied 2 of the laws of thermodynamics. So, I've got some friends in the room. So one of my other things is, I don't need to be right about what I don't do. I'm just sharing that I need to be right about what I invest in. But I'm just sharing that because the amount of money that you can make, even if something works, depends on what someone will pay and how much money you had to consume to get there. And just to loop back to this whole notion of control, I mean, I hate to be fatalistic, but if you think you have control now, if you think that you could move your project on magically, if the NSF dropped $15 million free money in your lap, and that you could go and turn that into something that pharma wants without talking to them, or turn that into something that's successful. I just gave you 3 examples of very well-financed, brilliant PhD companies that they all flamed out. I'm not even including Solyndra.
So can I just make,
Yeah.
that's just such an important point. If I could just drive that home. So I'm going to use medical device examples just because they're better in my head. But to be clear about what he just said. So that little pacemaker company that I showed you on the board downstairs, the founders of that, let's assume that the strategic triggers the earn-out and that they go ahead and pay what they said they would pay. The founders of that company collectively will own about 20%. So call that a $200 million buyout, maybe 15%, okay? Call that a $200 million buyout, they'll make 30 million bucks. There's another very famous company called Cameron Health down south that's doing a very similar thing. It's a defibrillator instead of a pacemaker. That company just got bought by Boston Scientific, and that deal altogether is worth, I think, $1.1 billion. The founders in that company made 0. Wow. Not a single penny. They were wiped out 3 rounds ago. That company raised $300 million on its way to that earnout, and in the meantime, its founders got wiped out. So you can go ahead for the $1 billion exit and make 0, or you can go ahead for the nice little $200 million exit and take your 30 million bucks. That's why this is so fundamentally important to founders and entrepreneurs.
Yeah, there's a great book to that effect by Basil Peters on early exit that I think makes this point beautifully. That $25 million exit that Reg talked about produced more returns than any of those companies they're talking about down here for that founder.
Yep.
Just a note, we are really at the very, very early stage. I mean,
I'd go earlier.
But we follow companies at 3, 5, and 8 years. And we have had a lot of successes. But for us, a success is a good venture round an A, a B, or sometimes sale. I can tell you that what we've seen is in most cases the genius who had the idea that originally came to NSF. It's only in rare occasions that they are still the CEO of the company.
So, but one of the things we did is we shirked one element of the question. So I just want to show how many of you would like to hear mistakes we've seen made in pitches? Okay, so everyone should think of a mistake they've seen made in pitches and collectively. I'll start if you guys want. Sure. There we go. So what I don't see often enough is the motivation around the core problem. I mean, what is it that you guys want to fix? And I don't want to see that diabetes is a $25 billion or $250 billion problem. That is not the problem you're going to solve. Very few of you are going to come and cure type 1 or type 2 diabetes. You're attacking some niche, so give us the niche. What is the competition doing in that niche? And respectfully, they're not idiots. I don't want to see slides in which all the preceding companies were nitwits and we finally got it right. So the context of the problem that you're trying to solve is really the dynamic of that ecosystem, respectfully presented. And in as much as that could be an emotional story, then obviously the question is, here's what our technology is, in some salient point, not long, drawn out, 15 slides. And remember and this is 3 suggestions, remember the point of that first meeting is not to get a check, it's to get the second meeting. So those were my 3. Next.
We have a lot, but I guess if I had to choose, one is, to use the terminology used before, that you don't know what you don't know. We are going to give you money to answer questions. So if you come saying we are the only technology in the market and we are the best, I mean, you're going to look, forgive my French, like a moron. We want to know that you know how the market looks like. We want to know that you have even competitors, but how is your technology more innovative and why, in which way it is better? The other mistake that you may make is not to make your commercialization pitch. Show us that you at least understand how this is going to go to the market. You don't even need to tell us how you're going to do it, but just make your point that the technology we're going to fund, by the way, no equity, no loan, nothing, it's free money, that at least you understand how that will look like as a product.
Oh man, those were the 2 I was going to use.
Sorry.
No, but the commercialization one really is, because particularly in biotech, people will spend 90% of the presentation telling you about the science. And it's in that first meeting. And, you know, I'm not saying the science isn't really fundamentally important, but the balance of why are you, let's assume your science works, and that you've got the intellectual property, why are you uniquely on this planet the people to carry that to the marketplace? What is there about you and your team that's your experience, your background, your passion to commercialize that? The fact that it's good science doesn't mean it can make it to the market, right? A lot of these things are really, really, really hard. So this whole idea that we know how to commercialize things like this, we need to get that message really quickly in your early presentations. The second one I would mention is everyone tends to build the market from the top down, as was mentioned here. I'm going to cure all diabetes. We actually want to see it built patient segment by patient segment, even if those are small patient segments. So the way we actually want the market argument constructed is, if you're a physician and you're treating this group of patients, when would it be malpractice not to use your thing? On which set of patients does it have to be used? Not it is optional to be used. It has to be used. Then on which other set of patients? Then who it's probably the right decision to make. Show us how you build your market, patient set by patient set. That way, that's really impressive when people can do that.
That's a question for one of the points you just made. So you specified, why is it that you, or the team, are the most appropriate people to bring something to market? So I wager that in this room there's at least one other first-time entrepreneur. And if you are a budding entrepreneur as opposed to a serial entrepreneur, there is very little beyond perhaps a publication record or a CV of, I've been to prestigious universities and Kaufman conferences to state why you are the correct person.
Okay, a good point. So let's be a little bit more team maybe oriented in our thinking about this. So the GEMIS group, let me just use that as an example. So you've got 4 people there. 3 of them are the scientists who worked at Dade Sharing for 15 years on this compound. This was their project for 15 years. There's nobody in the world who actually understands this particular compound and this science better than those 3 guys. Then they went out and got a CEO, VP, a CEO biz dev guy who has commercialized vaccines. Nice combination. So we don't expect somebody to have everything, but we do expect there to be that concept of the science and the commercialization.
Yeah, I think that's extremely important. And I helped start the first business plan competition at MIT, the very first one. I was the one that came up with the idea that we called it 10K, and we go around to big law firms and accounting firms and get $10,000 and give it. This is back when $10,000 seemed like a lot of money. And,
1840?
Yeah. So the whole thing is, if you good entrepreneurs, they go and they find the people who are the perfect experts. And until they've come up with those people, they learn everything there is. So, people say, follow your passion because then you'll lead to success. Why is that? It's because you're going after it all the time. It's just like little, I don't know, has anyone got any kids or friends that have kids that are like 6 and they know the baseball statistics of all the hitters? And it's like, how do you know that? People, when they get really interested in stuff, they get insight, they go deeper, they learn everything there is to learn. So I think that every entrepreneur was a first-time entrepreneur at some point. I think working with people who are better than you, who's your dream team? So I'm right now investing in something. The paper has not even published. That's why I said I'd go earlier. Why am I doing this? Because the opportunity is amazing, and this group has done it 6 times before. And they just made me 5X in 4 years, put 3 drugs into the clinic, best in class, on $40 million. Yeah. Don't you want to join them now? So that's really what you want to do is don't, and as Alan says, you don't have to have the full answer the first day, but be talking to the people who have ideas of where you should go and have some knowledge of it, but don't overrepresent what you know, because that gets you in the most problem.
Maybe if I can just quickly add another point to that. So I didn't get a chance to say it downstairs, but what we're talking about is you guys spend all this time on the science and engineering, the discoveries, and then the technology. Then you spend an hour and a half on the business plan, and you drive down the highway throwing it out the window, and that's that, right? The business plan, commercialization, modeling aspect of this is every single bit as important as the science and technology, and you got to spend a big chunk of time on it. You got to network like crazy. You got to go understand these problems and solve these problems. You can't just go in there like, I've never commercialized anything, but you should give me a... So you've got to, people just don't seriously put enough effort and attention into the commercialization aspect of their presentation. So it's just work you have to do, or a team member you have to get to join, and you've got to check that box in a meaningful way.
Questions, I guess. Go ahead.
I just have a follow-up to that. So what if you have a scientific team that's very strong, but you don't have the business expertise? How do angel or VCs like to be involved in picking which business person joins the team, or do you want that much before you even look at a company?
Well, I don't think, I mean, I think what they would love, what
Are you going
everyone
to pick
wants,
well?
what everyone loves is a nice package in which all the elements, the technology, the opportunity, the competition, the team, everything's all there. And inasmuch as any of those are extraordinary, it can make up for deficits in another. So it's a multivariate equation, and you can win even with deficits. But we were participants in an investment that got to a term sheet from 2 different firms sequentially and couldn't close because no one could agree on the CEO. This idea that they can flip the Rolodex and find the person for you is, I don't think, very often true. Even though there's a big recession, the number of proven folks that would get people to jump up and down is small.
Your ability to attract a person like that says a lot about you and your technology, and so that's part of the test that's going on here. Anything anyone else wants to add?
There is no answer to that, of course. There needs to be enough of a team that we can see the ability to execute. I think all of us, if we can't add value, we shouldn't be writing a check, and part of that value is going to be our network. And we sure should be able to add team members to what it is you're doing that are exactly the right people, and that's a good consultation and dialogue to have with funders. But the more you can answer that on your own, that's great. But there's no, you don't have to have any particular thing. We've done deals where we want to add, we know exactly who should be the CEO in this thing.
So I'd like to answer the question a little bit differently, which is your technologists cannot remain technologists if you're a company, period. Technology is a commodity. Even your special technology is a commodity. Every single person has to understand with every experiment that they do how they're creating value, a multiple of value. And the best companies, everybody at the company knows what they're supposed to do, why they're doing it, and how to change direction, because things change, because it's technology. You learn new things. So what things do you exploit? You can only do that if all your technologists understand why you're doing what you're doing, who cares, and what's the commercial significance.
In our case, we see that 2 stages. Just to let you know, you qualify even if you have 499 employees. So if you are a company or work for a company that in fact makes a lot of money, but doesn't want to take risks developing a new technology, it's okay, come to us. So long you have less than 500 employees, we'll pay for it. Fantastic. Now, when we go to phase 1, and you don't need to come with a team. As I said before, you're a scientist. Hopefully you enter into the I-Corps program that NSF created with Steve Blank, with all the exercise this morning. But if not, it's okay, just come. You just need to show that you know what the needs are going to be. For phase 1, you don't need a business development person. You just need a good technical team. For phase 2, it would be good if you have already hired or retained a consultant in business development, maybe somebody who's going to help you with marketing or give you advice on regulatory matters. So we see that you really are moving to a prototype and you are really thinking product. But you don't need to have the perfect company. We just want you to, we want to see that you understand that for that specific stage of technology development, you're bringing the right talent.
Go ahead.
Ellen, you mentioned it downstairs, again up here. Could you expand a little bit on what steps the angels are taking, because I think it'll spill to the entrepreneurs, to not become diluted to zero?
There are a number of things that can make one feel better about this phenomenon. In the end, there is no protection. The last person writing a check does whatever the hell they want, and you can put anything in those documents you want to put in the documents, and then you'll have a choice, either take the money or don't take the money. So that's ultimately how the game is played. If you act professionally, use best practices, add value at early stages in these investments, as we all try very hard to do, not just say the words like VCs do, then you'll get some respect around the table. You'll earn the right to invest, and people will treat you more accurately. Does that mean you won't get a pay-to-play or a down round, or you won't get treated roughly? No, it doesn't, but it means you'll be treated the same as other investors are treated, and you won't be just crushed because you're small and an angel. 5 years ago, up until 5 years ago, even now in many parts of the countries, professional investors will crush angel investors just because they can. And so that I was more referring to that. So when we invest through a single entity, we invest through a term sheet, we have a series of rights in there, a bunch of things like that. But really the way to protect yourself, add value. So the next person who's investing actually sees that you're instrumental in making it a better investment and a less risky investment for them. That's the best way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get involved in anything to crush anyone in evaluation. A lot of these things, if you aren't capital efficient. They have a negative enterprise value, which means you need to spend $5 million to get to zero. So who here wants to be capital inefficient? Right? Why are some companies so much more capital efficient? Because they know where the starting line is and they know where they're heading. So that's really the key, and that's where taking the technologists and having them understand what the goal is in terms of what you're trying to accomplish as a business is very, very important.
So would you rather invest in a first-time entrepreneur or in a seasoned?
Could you repeat the question? First time versus seasoned entrepreneur, which is preferable?
In the case of NSF, is very strong about broadening participation, which is a very polite, sophisticated way of saying affirmative action. So, yeah, so for us, broadening participation means that if at equal merits, we have a woman and a man, personally, I have the discretion to give the award to a woman, or between again, equal technical, scientific, commercial merits, a minority, or somebody who never started, because I may go safer giving an award to a company that I know is going to make leverage that money, but on the long term for the country and for the taxpayers, I may not be doing the best exercise, because these folks can go to our friends on this side of the table, get that money. I want to give the money to those who could never do it and show at least the potential to do it.
The problem with being a first-time entrepreneur is you think you're listening, but you're not listening. You're not learning fast enough, and that's why you fail. And people are trying to tell you things, and you just don't know where they're coming from.
But first-time entrepreneurs succeed more often than second-time or third-time.
Not mine.
Let me, there's a lot of questions it implied what you're saying, but let me give you one point that maybe is helpful. So first, the answer is absolutely yes. Let me tell you what you need to do, though. So that synthetic biology company up there, the one I showed you that's doing cartilage replacement, that's a synthetic. So 2 young people at Stanford, postdocs at Stanford, said that they've invented a polymer that none of the major orthopedic companies in all the world with all their R&D teams could develop. And they've been trying to develop slippery polymers for quite some period of time. So DePuy, Stryker, Medtronic, all of them, you'd have to believe, failed. And these 2 young guys at Stanford, who never run anything, succeeded.
Who gave them money?
We did. I've got $4 million in that one, and it just raised a $14 million round. It's raised $18 million altogether. Now, why did we do that? Because the 2 young fellows who started that knew they were passionate, they wanted to do it, they wanted to see it get to patients, but they also knew that they wouldn't be CTO, they wouldn't be CEO, they would deliver all the value they could to the company, and they would be completely supportive as we grew the company and achieved milestones of bringing in the right talent and building the right team and company. And with those assurances and with their participation, we thought that was a fair bet to make.
Yeah, so good entrepreneurs, it's like improv. The answer to everything is yes and. You just keep moving forward. You're making it up. And I would submit to you, there's a lot of people that believe the venture model is broken, that the biotech model is broken. There's nothing wrong with the model. It's the way that's being practiced. But most of the stuff that people put out there as rules, like venture firms, we don't care if most of them lose because we get that one winner. You know, only 1 out of every 3 funds over time will even get I've had a 10x, and I'm very rare in the venture community to actually have had one, and I was lucky. So most of that is a good way to raise money.
You have a page question there.
I had a question regarding valuation and value creation. I mean, especially in therapeutics, I mean, this is the hockey stick of all as far as value inflection points.
No.
Well, I mean, He's Canadian. I'm too dumb to take on the next thing. But when you go at an early stage and you try and say your value of your company, I mean, the job of the angels and the venture capital is to get as lowest as possible. And
No.
for us is to get as high as
See, this is what I'm talking about. No.
So-
If I can own 99% of your company, who's going to run it? Who's going to do it?
Well,
What's the motivation?
I'm saying at the early stage points, how do we increase our value
The biggest look, the biggest problem with early stage companies is they have a negative enterprise value. Most of the plans that you guys come to us with, I've got to spend $10 million to figure out if I'm anywhere, and now I've got something that a farmer will pay me $5 million for. That's the problem.
So if I say I just need $1 million so you can make $12 million, then that's better.
You got to show me why.
Well, yeah, and that's why I'm
So,
questioning.
so I'm not clear. I'm not clear on the question. So for example, there's a technology down south, happens to be another synthetic, but it's a synthetic injectable into the heart that appears to have considerably better data than stem cells and gene therapy injections that are being done. It's really quite a nice piece of data, but that's all they have. The human experiment for that is somewhere between $3 and $5 million, and it's purely binary. It's either going to work or not work. They gave up 40% of the company to get that money, but if that works, they're going to make a shitload of money. So I mean, I think that was a I think that's a fair valuation for a purely binary decision on $5 million, and I think if that works, everybody's going to be happy as hell.
I mean, like my company, we're animal proof of concept, right? And so the next stage is you do the animal tox and stuff to get into, say, the human model to see safety and efficacy. So how do you maximize your valuation with your animal proof of concept?
All right, so this is I'm not picking on you either.
No, that's a fine pick on.
It was a hard week and it's Friday. This whole concept of maximizing valuation is idiotic. If you want to get the maximum value for this empty can, you can, but it'll take you 1,000 years. Entrepreneurs get stuff done. So my question to you is, what is your proof of concept in animals worth today to pharma? What is it lacking? Is there another model? In that therapeutic field for that class of target, everyone that's ahead of you, what are their weaknesses? What can you show preclinically to show that you're ahead of the game? So in this thing that I'm investing in, that's before the paper's been published, we're going to be quote
What's that worth?
Well, we're going
What's
to
evaluate? $2 million? What's something worth before the paper's published?
We've actually done it very much like a lot of the things with angels do it, where it's going to convert at the time when it actually gets funded. So there's a danger if you get something valued too high or then you also have another problem in terms of your financing path.
This is a really critical area for, and I think the idea, and hell, I've been a founder too, and I get you fight like hell when it's your equity, but getting it right, which means everybody wins every round for the rest of your life and you never ever have a down round, is so critically important. One down round, if you're right 5 times and there's one down round in there, it crushes out the company morale, it crushes out your stock options. It's so devastating. You really don't want to risk it.
Yeah,
And who's it most devastating is to the common shareholders. It's not most devastating preceding for shareholders.
Well, no. If you're only in the Series A, it's bad for you too.
But you see the case in the case where they are funding a company even before it's published, they are in fact funding a team of extremely seasoned people who have done it again and again and again, and that de-risks the project enormously. My suggestion, and as part of my job description of outreach, come first to us. It's going to give you at least until we want you to start raising money. It gives you at least 2 years, and you're going to learn a lot through that process because getting money from us is very difficult. And we give you what I say a colonoscopy without anesthesia, and you'll come you'll come a much better company, unless there is something about your technology that any venture capitalist would just go crazy. Come to us first, and then you go to them.
I think go to both of us simultaneously.
Yeah, don't waste your time. But
So 2 colonoscopies without anesthesia?
Oh, definitely. Probably a lot more.
At the same time.
Let's have a question from over here. Yeah.
You touched upon a couple of times about the platform technologies, and Carl, I know you've invested in earlier. I'm curious to hear your viewpoints about how you look at platform technologies, especially in the context of the exits and not risk diversification.
Well, I don't want to bypass the risk diversification. So, I mean, it's abundantly clear that most drugs entering clinical development fail. And, you know, this is 85% of biologics and more than 90% of small molecules. That number hasn't shifted in 20, 30 years. UCSF is an enterprise devoted to better understanding human biology. We're making great gains. We haven't shifted that needle at all. So even after you get into the clinic, what's your probability of actually producing sales? 10%. Okay, so now begin to discount back to where you are today, what that means in terms of valuation, which gets to Alan's point. So how can you lower that inevitable clinical risk? Well, take biology risk off the table. So one of the things that's been very attractive to us is to invest in companies that have very cool platforms that can be not first in class, but maybe best in class. So take a company we didn't invest in that's played itself all the way through, Kovacs. So it's a way of improving the PK of protein therapeutics. What did they go after? They go after something really cool? No, they went after GLIB1. Totally boring target. They said, hey, if we can demonstrate that this works, Pfizer took them out for $230, and it was a very nice story for everyone involved. Same company would be more attractive to some venture capitalists and some investors had they gone for a first in class. There's no question about that. But for us, for smaller investors, we want technical risk that you can, with that mouse model, show us with GLIB1, you really have run the risk out. And so that's the platform versus. And we also, and there's a small set of investors that believe this, that there will be a premium paid for platforms. It doesn't always play out, but there are companies that are showing premiums for platforms.
So I think this is an extremely important question, and actually I fell in love with platforms, made a lot of money in platforms, backed way away, and it was a conversation with Doug that really made me reevaluate that.
Oh my God.
No, because so I've actually been, it was like 3 years ago too, and I've actually been looking at a bunch of things. I think there's so the idea that you can go and build something like Rosetta and get, what pharma is cutting their early stage research budget. So no pharma company is going to pay a couple $100 million for a tool or something like that. But there are a lot of things where they will pay $25 million. And this is something where angels and also smaller funds can play. So if you can build something for $5 million, or you can do an Ablexis-like deal, which is a local company that did a brilliant, something brilliant. There's another company doing the same exact thing that they're doing, and they're trying to develop the first drug, and this other team that is basically building to a technical milestone. I mean, that's as good as it gets, right? Great technical team. They've done it before. When they hit that technical milestone, the venture investors are going to get a venture return, and all the employees, their stock options, they're going to get to ring the bell. And that's great. I mean, that just makes me really excited. And I'm committed to that on $25 million exits, $50 million exits. I think we need to be more open about how we drive to those.
I just wanted quickly to say something that some people, including myself, hate writing grants. I cannot stand it. In fact, that's why I left academia many years ago. So some people do not dare apply into an SF because an SF has this like prestige and only the best, only 10, 15%. I can tell you that sometimes we find the proposals are very crappy. They're poorly written because we are trained to see the value. I mean, like a venture capitalist or an angel investor, we see the value between the lines, or we bring the best experts in the country or abroad to see those proposals. It costs a lot of money, in fact, to review your proposals. In average, $20,000 a panel or more for like 7, 10 technologies. So do not be scared of submitting an SBIR grant. Call us very early, call the program director. We are obliged to give you service, public service, and to coach you. It doesn't need to be perfectly written. We're looking for that genius idea, that new technology that is going to change the market.
All right, I have very good news. The next question should be asked over beer, and if they're not supplying it, they're selling it downstairs. So the next questions, I think everyone here would be happy to chat afterwards, but it is, we've exhausted our time. Thank you so much for coming. I hope you find that useful.